The transport ship cut through the darkness of space like a blade through silk. Inside the small vessel, Dr. Jiwon Park pressed her face against the window and watched Kithara Prime grow larger in front of them. The planet looked dead from space. Gray and brown with no blue oceans or green forests. Just endless rocky mountains and deep valleys that had seen no life for thousands of years. "First time seeing a Valdris world?" asked Captain Hyunwoo Kim from the pilot seat. His voice carried, the tired tone of someone who had made this trip many times before. Jawan nodded without taking her eyes off the planet. "The pictures don't do it justice. It looks so empty." "Wait until you see the ruins," said Dr. Narration, looking up from her translation device. "They're unlike anything else in the galaxy." The ship shook slightly as they entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the window, Jiwon could see strange shapes rising from the surface like frozen lightning. Crystal formations twisted up toward the sky in impossible spirals and curves. Each one was taller than the biggest buildings on Earth, yet they seemed to dance in the wind that no longer existed on this dead world. "The Valdris built those 50,000 years ago," Hyunwoo explained as he guided the ship toward a flat area between the crystal towers. "Nobody knows how or why. They just vanished one day, leaving all this behind." The ship landed with a soft thud, and Jiwon felt her heart race with excitement. She had studied the Valdris for 10 years, reading every report and watching every video the Galactic Research Consortium had collected. But being here, seeing the ruins with her own eyes, was different. This was history she could touch. The airlock hissed open, and the three humans stepped out onto the surface of Kithara Prime. The planet's thin atmosphere required breathing masks, but the gravity felt almost like Earth's. Jiwon took her first steps toward the nearest crystal formation and gasped. Up close, the structures were even more amazing. The crystals were not just clear like glass. They had layers of color that seemed to move and shift when she looked at them from different angles. Blues became greens, greens became purples, and purples became colors she had no names for. "Beautiful, aren't they?" The voice came from behind her. Jiwon turned to see Dr. Veltar approaching. The Zenthari researcher was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. His species was famous throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and logic. "They're incredible," Jiwon replied. "How long have your people been studying them?" 3,000 years, Veltar said with pride. "We have measured every crystal, recorded every energy pattern, and run countless tests. The Valdris were clearly an advanced species, but their technology follows no known laws of physics." Another voice joined the conversation. "The Corvani have been here even longer." Kixmol, the expedition's chief engineer, walked up to the group. The Corvani looked like a cross between a lizard and a machine, with metal implants covering half of their scaled body. "Our computers have analyzed these structures for 5,000 years. We have found nothing useful." Jiwon felt a small stab of disappointment. If the smartest species in the galaxy had been studying these ruins for thousands of years without success, what chance did she have? The Zenthari were known for their superior minds, and the Corvani had technology that humans could barely understand. What could a human archaeologist possibly discover that they had missed? "Don't look so worried," Nari said, noticing Jiwon's expression. "Fresh eyes sometimes see things that old ones miss." The team spent the rest of the day setting up their base camp. The consortium had sent them to conduct a new survey of the site, hoping that modern equipment might reveal something previous expeditions had overlooked. Jiwon unpacked her tools, devices for measuring energy patterns, cameras for recording, crystal formations, and computers for analyzing data. As the day wore on, Jiwon began taking detailed photographs of the crystal structures. She climbed up rocky slopes and crawled through narrow passages between the formations, always looking for new angles and perspectives. The other team members worked more systematically, taking measurements and readings with their advanced instruments. "Jiwon!" Hyunwoo called out as the sun began to set. "You should see this!" She followed his voice to a flat area where several crystal formations came together. In the fading light, the crystals seemed to glow with their own inner fire. The colors shifted and danced like aurora in a clear night sky. "The energy readings spike at sunset," Veltar explained, holding up a device that beeped and flashed. We believe it's caused by the temperature change, but we're not certain. Jiwon stared at the glowing crystals and felt something tickle at the back of her mind. There was a pattern here, something familiar but just out of reach. She had felt this way before when working on difficult puzzles back on Earth. "Can I see those energy readings?" she asked Veltar. The Zenthari handed her the device. The screen showed waves of energy moving through the crystals in complex patterns. Most of the patterns looked random, but Jiwon noticed that some of them repeated every few minutes. "Interesting," she murmured, studying the display. "What is it?" Nari asked, moving closer to look over Jiwon's shoulder. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe nothing. But these patterns..." Jiwon frowned as she tried to put her thoughts into words. "They remind me of something I studied back on Earth, fractal mathematics. The way patterns repeat themselves at different scales." Kixmol made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans and their pattern-seeking. You see faces in clouds and meaning in random noise." Jiwon felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but Nari put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't listen to him. Humans are good at finding patterns. It's one of our strengths." That night, as the others slept in their temporary shelters, Jiwon sat outside studying her photographs on a portable screen. She scrolled through hundreds of images, looking at the crystal formations from every angle she could remember. Something was definitely there, a pattern or structure that the instruments couldn't detect. She pulled up her notes from university, searching through old lectures on chaos theory and fractal geometry. These were subjects that most alien species found too chaotic and unpredictable to be useful. They preferred clean, logical mathematics that followed clear rules. But humans had always been drawn to the messy, complicated patterns found in nature. As she compared her photographs to the mathematical models on her screen, Jiwon began to see it. The crystal formations weren't random at all. When viewed from the right angles, they formed shapes that repeated and connected across the entire site. It was like looking at a vast three-dimensional puzzle where each piece was perfectly placed. Her hands shook with excitement as she traced the patterns on her screen. If she was right, the entire site was one massive structure, not just scattered crystal formations, but a single incredible work of engineering that covered several square kilometers. "This is impossible," she whispered to herself. But the evidence was right there in her photographs. The patterns were clear once you knew how to look for them. She thought about waking the others and sharing her discovery, but decided to wait until morning. She needed more time to study the patterns and make sure she wasn't making a mistake. The last thing she wanted was to embarrass herself in front of the galaxy's leading experts. But as Jiwon sat there in the alien starlight, surrounded by the ancient crystal towers, she felt certain that she had found something important. The Valdris hadn't just built beautiful sculptures. They had created something with purpose. And after 50,000 years of silence, their creation was finally ready to speak to someone who could understand its language, the language of patterns that only a human mind could read. The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal formations as Jiwon prepared to share her discovery with the team. She had spent most of the night organizing her photographs and checking her calculations. The patterns were definitely there, hidden in plain sight for thousands of years. "You called this meeting to discuss what exactly?" Dr. Veltar asked as the team gathered around a portable table. His large black eyes showed no emotion, but Jiwon could hear doubt in his voice. Jiwon activated her portable display and showed AE the first set of photographs. "I believe the crystal formations aren't separate structures. They're all connected parts of a single system." She gestured to the screen where lines and angles overlaid her photographs. "If you look at them from specific viewpoints and connect the geometric patterns, they form mathematical sequences. Complex ones." Kixmol leaned forward, his metal implants clicking as he moved. "Our scanners have measured every crystal for 5,000 years. There are no hidden connections between them." "Not physical connections," Jiwon explained patiently. "Mathematical ones. The positions and angles create relationships, like coordinates in a three-dimensional equation." Veltar studied the display, with his superior Zenthari intellect. After several minutes, he straightened up and shook his head. "I see random crystal formations. Nothing more. Our quantum computers have analyzed this site millions of times. If mathematical patterns existed, they would have found them." "But that's just it," Jiwon said, her excitement growing. Your computers look for logical, systematic patterns. This is different. It's more like jazz music or abstract art. The pattern exists, but it follows rules that feel right, rather than rules that compute easily. Nari nodded thoughtfully. Jiwan's right about how humans see patterns differently. We evolved to find meaning in chaos. It helped our ancestors survive. Primitive pattern seeking is not science, Kixmol said firmly. The Corvani have been studying dimensional mathematics since before your species discovered fire. If these patterns existed, we would know. Jiwan felt frustration building in her chest. She pulled up another set of images on her screen. Look at this formation here. The crystal spirals follow a Fibonacci sequence, but modified. And this group over here creates ratios that match musical harmonies from Earth. Coincidence, Veltar stated. The Zenthari have conducted probability analysis on random formations. Sometimes chance creates patterns that appear meaningful. Then, explain this. Jiwan switched to a wider view that showed the entire site from above. She had worked for hours to create this composite image from her photographs. The whole site forms a mandala pattern when viewed from exactly 2.7 kilometers up, the same height as the tallest crystal formation. The aliens studied the image in silence. Even from the aerial view, the mandala pattern was subtle. It required a specific way of seeing, connecting dots that weren't obviously connected, finding rhythm in apparent randomness. I see nothing, Veltar finally said. Random placement of structures creates many possible patterns if one looks for them. Captain Hyunwoo, who had been quiet during the discussion, spoke up. What if Jiwan's right? What if there really is a pattern here that only humans can see? Impossible, Kixmol replied. Corvani mathematics is far more advanced than human mathematics. We discovered calculus 50,000 years before humans existed. Different doesn't mean better, Nari said calmly. Humans approach problems differently than other species. We see connections where others see chaos. Jiwan switched to a new image showing energy readings overlaid on the crystal formations. The energy patterns support my theory. Look how the power flows between the formations. It's not random. It follows the same mathematical relationships I found in the physical structures. She pointed to specific areas on the screen. Here, here, and here. The energy moves in spirals that match the golden ratio, and the timing of the pulses creates rhythms similar to human heartbeats. Energy flows follow the path of least resistance, Veltar explained patiently. What you call patterns are simply physics. But why do the flows create these specific patterns? Jiwan pressed. Why not others? The Valdris built these structures with purpose. Every angle, every position was chosen for a reason. The discussion continued for hours, with Jiwan showing more evidence and the aliens finding logical explanations for each discovery. She felt like she was trying to explain color to someone who could only see in black and white. Perhaps we should contact the consortium, Kixmol suggested during a break. Let the experts on Zenthari Prime examine Dr. Park's findings. I am an expert, Veltar said with pride. I have studied Valdris sites for 300 years. If patterns existed, I would see them. Jiwan walked away from the group and stood alone among the crystal formations. The afternoon sun made the structures glow with inner light, and she could almost feel them humming with hidden energy. She knew she was right, but how could she prove it to minds that thought so differently from her own? Don't give up, Nari said, walking over to join her. Sometimes being right isn't enough. You have to find a way to make others see what you see. How can I do that when they think human perception is primitive? By proving that primitive perception can find truth that advanced logic cannot. That evening, Jiwan sat in her shelter working on a new approach. Instead of trying to convince the aliens through words, she would show them through action. If the crystal formations really were part of a larger system, then there should be ways to test that theory. She studied the energy readings again, looking for patterns in when the crystals glowed brightest. The energy spikes happened at regular intervals, but not simple ones. The timing followed complex mathematical sequences that reminded her of prime numbers, but modified in subtle ways. Using her portable computer, Jiwan began mapping the energy flows across the entire site. She worked through the night, tracking how power moved from crystal to crystal in waves that pulsed across the landscape like a slow heartbeat. By morning, she had discovered something amazing. The energy flows weren't random. They were carrying information. The pulses created patterns that looked almost like language, if language could be written in pure mathematics. "I need to show you something," she told the team as they gathered for breakfast. This time, instead of showing photographs, Ji-won displayed her energy flow analysis. The screen showed the entire site as a living map of light and power, with streams of energy flowing between the crystal formations in complex patterns. "The crystals aren't just decorations," she explained. "They're components of a massive computer. The energy flows are data streams carrying calculations across the entire network." Veltar studied the display with new interest. "These energy patterns are more complex than our previous readings showed." "Because you were measuring individual crystals," Ji-won said. "I'm measuring the system as a whole. The crystals work together, sharing information and processing data as one giant machine." "But what kind of calculations would require such a massive computer?" Hyun-woo asked. Ji-won smiled as she prepared to reveal her most important discovery. "I think I know, but to prove it, we need to find more Valdris sites and compare their patterns. This isn't just one computer. It's part of a network that spans the galaxy." For the first time since arriving on Kithara Prime, the aliens looked truly interested in what the human scientist had found. Even if they couldn't see the patterns themselves, they could recognize the implications of what Ji-won was suggesting. The Valdris hadn't just built monuments on scattered worlds, they had built the largest computer network in galactic history. And after 50,000 years of silence, it was finally ready to reveal its secrets to someone who could understand its unique language, the language of chaos and pattern that only human minds could fluently speak. 3 months after the discovery on Kithara Prime, Dr. Ji-won Park stood in the main conference room of the Galactic Research Consortium headquarters on Zenthari Prime. The room was filled with the galaxy's most brilliant minds, Zenthari scientists, Corvani engineers, and researchers from dozens of other species. All eyes were focused on the massive display screen behind her. "We have confirmed similar patterns on 17 different Valdris sites across the galaxy," Ji-won announced to the assembled crowd. "Each site contains the same type of crystalline computer network, and all of them appear to be connected through quantum communication channels." The discovery had created a sensation throughout the scientific community. For the first time in galactic history, someone had found a way to activate Valdris technology. The ancient crystal formations had begun responding to human interaction, lighting up with new energy patterns whenever Ji-won or other humans approached them. Dr. Veltar, now serving as Ji-won's reluctant assistant, operated the display controls. "The quantum signatures are unlike anything in our databases," he admitted. "The Valdris were using communication methods that we have not yet discovered." "But why build such a massive network?" asked Dr. Thexani, a prominent researcher from the Aquatic Federation. "What problem could require processing power from multiple star systems?" Ji-won had been dreading this question because the answer was terrifying. "We believe the Valdris were trying to solve the space-time degradation problem." The room fell silent. Space-time degradation was a theoretical concern that some scientists worried about but most ignored. Every time a ship entered hyperspace, it created tiny tears in the fabric of reality. Most experts believed these tears were too small to matter and would heal naturally over time. "That's impossible," scoffed Dr. Rixtor from the Corvani Empire. "Our calculations show that hyperspace travel creates negligible damage to space-time. The tears heal themselves within microseconds." "The individual tears do heal," Ji-won agreed. "But they leave scars. And over millions of years, those scars add up." She gestured to Veltar, who activated a new display showing data from the Valdris networks. The screen filled with complex equations and energy readings that made even the advanced alien scientists look confused. "The Valdris computers have been monitoring space-time integrity for 50,000 years, Ji-won explained. "Their data shows that hyperspace damage accumulates much faster than we thought. The galaxy is developing weak points where reality itself is becoming unstable." The audience erupted in debate. Some scientists demanded to see the raw data, while others argued that human interpretation of alien technology couldn't be trusted. But Ji-won had learned to expect skepticism. She had brought proof that even the most logical minds couldn't deny. "Computer, show sector analysis ZX7749, she commanded. The display switched to show a three-dimensional map of a region near the galaxy's outer rim. Red zones marked areas where space-time was becoming dangerously unstable. There were far more red zones than anyone had expected. This sector has been experiencing random hyperspace failures for the past 50 years, Jiwan said. Ships entering hyperspace in these areas simply disappear. We assumed it was due to natural phenomena or pirate activity. But the Valdris data shows the real cause, space-time collapse. Captain Hyunwoo, who had remained on Cathara Prime to oversee the site, appeared on screen via quantum communication. "We've confirmed the data with our own sensors," he reported. "The weak points are real, and they're growing." Dr. Nari, working from a Valdris site 3 systems away, added her own findings. "The pattern is spreading toward the galaxy's core. At current rates, major trade routes will become unusable within 200 years. 200 years is a long time, Dr. Thexani pointed out. "Surely we can find a solution before then." Jiwan shook her head grimly. "The damage accelerates as it spreads. Once it reaches the core systems, total collapse will happen within decades, not centuries. The Valdris faced the same crisis 50,000 years ago." "And what happened to them?" asked a voice from the back of the room. "They disappeared," Jiwan said simply. "We believe they tried to solve the problem but ran out of time. Their entire civilization vanished just as the calculations were reaching completion." The room fell quiet again as the implications sank in. The galaxy's greatest achievement, faster-than-light travel, was slowly destroying the fabric of space itself. Every merchant ship, every military vessel, every passenger transport was contributing to a catastrophe that would eventually make interstellar civilization impossible. "But surely our technology is more advanced than the Valdris," Dr. Rixtor protested. "We can find a better solution." "Can we?" Jiwan challenged. "The Valdris were incredibly advanced. They built computers that operate on principles we still don't understand. They detected a problem that our best scientists missed completely, and they worked on it for thousands of years before disappearing." She activated another display showing the scope of the Valdris network. Hundreds of worlds were connected by quantum communication links, all working together on the same massive calculation. "The good news is that they finished their work," Jiwan announced. "The Valdris computers have been running continuously for 50,000 years, refining and perfecting their solution. They're ready to share it with us." "Why didn't they share it before?" asked Dr. Veltar. "Because the solution requires a specific type of consciousness to implement," Jiwan explained. "The Valdris were purely logical beings, like most of you, but their solution requires both logic and intuition working together. It requires the kind of chaotic, pattern-seeking intelligence that humans possess." She gestured to a new display showing brain scans from various species. Human brain patterns were notably different from all the others, with more random neural connections and less structured thought processes. "This is why the crystals respond to humans, but not to other species," Jiwan continued. "The Valdris designed their system to interface with minds that think like ours. They knew that eventually, a species like humanity would discover their network and finish what they started. The implications were staggering. The Valdris had somehow predicted the evolution of human consciousness 50,000 years before humans existed. They had built their entire solution around the assumption that someday, beings with human-like minds would find their computers and understand their message." "What is their solution?" Dr. Thexani asked. Jiwan smiled for the first time since the presentation began. "It's beautiful in its simplicity. Instead of preventing hyperspace damage, we repair it. The Valdris discovered how to reverse the quantum signatures that create space-time tears. With the right modifications to our hyperspace drives, every ship that enters hyperspace will actually heal old damage instead of creating new damage." That's incredible," Dr. Veltar whispered. "If it works, we could repair 50,000 years of accumulated damage within a few centuries." "But there's a catch," Jiwan added. "The process requires precise coordination across the entire galaxy. Every ship, every hyperspace jump must be timed and calibrated to exact specifications. Miss the timing by even microseconds, and the repair process becomes a destruction process instead. The room buzzed with excited conversation as scientists began discussing the technical challenges. But Jiwon noticed that not everyone looked happy with the news. Some of the military representatives wore expressions of concern, and several economic advisors were whispering urgently to each other. "There's something else," Jiwon said, raising her voice to quiet the crowd. "The Valdris left us a warning. They tried to implement their solution but failed because their various factions couldn't agree to cooperate. Political disputes and economic interests prevented them from achieving the coordination they needed." The room fell silent once more as everyone considered the parallel to their current situation. The galaxy was divided into competing empires, independent federations, and countless smaller factions. Getting them all to agree on anything was nearly impossible, even when their survival depended on it. "How long do we have?" asked Captain Hyun-woo from the screen. Jiwon looked at the data one more time before answering. "According to the Valdris projections, we have less than 2 years before the damage becomes irreversible. After that, no solution will be possible. 2 years to convince the entire galaxy to work together on the most complex engineering project in history. 2 years to implement technology that most species couldn't even understand. 2 years to save galactic civilization from a threat that most people didn't even know existed. And humanity, the youngest and least advanced species in the galaxy, was the only one capable of making it happen." 6 months had passed since Jiwon's revelation about the space-time crisis, and the galaxy was buzzing with activity. The Galactic Research Consortium had assembled the largest scientific expedition in history, with teams of researchers working around the clock to understand and activate dormant Valdris installations across hundreds of worlds. Jiwon stood in the command center on Cathara Prime, watching dozens of screens that showed progress reports from sites across the galaxy. Each screen displayed a different Valdris installation, and slowly but surely, more of them were coming online as human researchers learned to interface with the ancient technology. "Site 47 just achieved stable connection," reported Dr. Nari, from her position at the communications console. She had become the expedition's chief coordinator, managing the complex network of research teams scattered across the galaxy. "That makes 63 active sites," Captain Hyun-woo noted from his position near the main display. "How many more do we need?" "At least 200 for full network coverage," Jiwon replied, studying the galactic map. "But the Valdris computers are telling us that quality matters more than quantity. We need the right sites in the right positions." The breakthrough had come 3 months earlier when Jiwon discovered that the Valdris crystals responded not just to human presence, but to human emotions and thought patterns. The ancient computers seemed to read human consciousness directly, translating thoughts into commands and displaying information in ways that human minds could understand. Dr. Veltar approached with a datapad in his hands. The Zenthari scientist had become one of Jiwon's strongest supporters after seeing undeniable proof of human abilities with Valdris technology. "The pattern recognition algorithms are working perfectly," he reported. "Human researchers are activating sites 50 times faster than our automated systems ever could." "Any word from the Corvani Empire?" Jiwon asked. Veltar's expression darkened. "They are still refusing to allow human teams near their Valdris sites. They insist their own engineers can handle the activation process." This was the galaxy's biggest problem. While the scientific community had accepted the reality of the space-time crisis, many political and military leaders remained skeptical. The proud Corvani Empire found it humiliating to admit that humans could operate technology their own scientists couldn't understand. "Their sites remain completely inactive," Dr. Nari added. "The crystals won't respond to non-human consciousness, no matter how advanced their technology is." Jiwon sighed in frustration. Politics was threatening to destroy their chances of saving the galaxy. The Valdris solution required precise coordination between all active sites, and missing key installations could make the entire network unstable. "Incoming transmission from Zenthari Prime," announced the communications officer. The main screen switched to show Dr. Kethavar, the head of the Galactic Research Consortium. The elderly Zenthari looked tired and worried. "Dr. Park, I have troubling news. The Corvan Empire has issued an ultimatum. They demand that all Valdris technology be turned over to their control, or they will begin military action against research sites in their territory. They can't be serious, Captain Hyunwoo said. Don't they understand what's at stake? Emperor Korthvon believes the humans are using Valdris technology to gain an unfair advantage over other species, Dr. Kethvar explained. He sees this as a plot to establish human dominance in the galaxy. Jiwon felt anger rising in her chest. Human dominance? We're trying to save everyone. The space-time collapse will destroy their empire just as surely as it will destroy everyone else. I have shared all our data with their scientists, Dr. Kethvar continued, but they claim our evidence is fabricated or misinterpreted. They refuse to believe that their technology could miss such an important threat. The situation was getting worse by the day. Several smaller empires had sided with the Korvani, while others demanded proof that humans weren't secretly planning to use Valdris technology as a weapon. Fear and suspicion were spreading faster than scientific understanding. There's something else, Dr. Kethvar added. We've detected unusual activity in the unstable sectors. The space-time damage is accelerating faster than the Valdris computers predicted. We may have months instead of years. Jiwon stared at the galactic map, watching as red zones marking unstable space-time spread like an infection across the galaxy. Entire star systems were becoming unreachable as hyperspace routes collapsed. Trade was disrupting, communications were failing, and panic was beginning to spread among civilian populations. We need to try a different approach, she said finally. Instead of asking for permission, we need to show them proof they can't deny. What do you have in mind? Asked Dr. Nari Jiwon, turned to study the main display, which showed energy patterns flowing between active Valdris sites. An idea was forming. In her mind, dangerous, but possibly their only chance to break the political deadlock. The Valdris network isn't just a computer, she said slowly. It's a demonstration system. The crystals can show us exactly what will happen if we don't implement their solution. She began typing commands into her interface, sending instructions to Valdris sites across the galaxy. If we synchronize enough active installations, we can create a controlled space-time repair in a small area. Show the galaxy what the Valdris solution can do. That sounds extremely risky, Dr. Veltar warned. If the synchronization fails, we could create the exact type of collapse we're trying to prevent. The risk is worth it, Jiwon replied. We have 47 sites in the neutral zone that are fully operational. If we can coordinate them perfectly, we can repair the space-time damage in that entire sector. Captain Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. The neutral zone contains territory claimed by both the Korvani Empire and the Zenthari Federation. If we can fix the hyperspace routes there, both sides will see immediate benefits. And they'll see that we're not trying to trick them, Dr. Nari added. We're offering to solve problems in space that doesn't belong to humans. Over the next week, Jiwon worked with research teams across the galaxy to prepare for the demonstration. The synchronization process was incredibly complex, requiring split-second timing and perfect coordination between sites that were hundreds of light-years apart. The key breakthrough came when Jiwon realized that the Valdris computers weren't just following programmed instructions, they were learning and adapting. The network had been studying human consciousness for months, developing better ways to interface with human thoughts and emotions. It's like the crystals are becoming more human, she explained to her team. They're learning to think the way we think, to see patterns the way we see them. The night before the demonstration, Jiwon stood alone among the crystal formations on Kithara Prime. The structures hummed with energy, and she could feel their consciousness touching the edges of her mind. It was a strange sensation, not invasive, but comforting, like having a conversation with a very old and wise friend. Images flashed through her mind, memories of the Valdris civilization, their desperate struggle to solve the space-time crisis, their final sacrifice as they poured their consciousness into the crystal networks to preserve their solution for future generations. The Valdris hadn't just built computers, they had created artificial minds that could bridge the gap between pure logic and chaotic intuition. They had known that someday, beings with human-like consciousness would need their help, and they had prepared accordingly. Tomorrow we find out if it was enough, Jiwon whispered to the crystals. The demonstration began at exactly 12 hours Galactic Standard Time. Across the neutral zone, 47 Valdris installations activated simultaneously, their crystals blazing with synchronized light. Human operators at each site focused their thoughts on the same goal: healing the damaged space-time. In their sector, the effect was immediate and dramatic. On monitors throughout the galaxy, observers watched as the red zones marking unstable space-time began to shrink and disappear. Hyperspace routes that had been unusable for decades suddenly became stable again. The fabric of reality itself was being repaired by the combined power of ancient Valdris technology and human consciousness. Within hours, the first ships began successfully using the restored hyperspace routes. Trade convoys that had been stranded for months suddenly found themselves able to reach their destinations. Communication networks that had been disrupted by space-time instability came back online. The demonstration was a complete success, and the galaxy took notice. Even the most skeptical leaders couldn't argue with results they could see and measure for themselves. But Jiwan knew this was just the beginning. They had proven that the Valdris solution worked, but implementing it across the entire galaxy would require cooperation on a scale never before achieved in galactic history. The real test was yet to come. The Great Assembly Hall on Zenthari Prime had never seen anything like this before. Representatives from every major power in the galaxy sat together in the massive circular chamber, their various forms of life creating a colorful tapestry of scales, fur, metal, and flesh. At the center of it all stood Dr. Jiwan Park, a single human woman who held the key to galactic salvation in her hands. The demonstration in the neutral zone proved that the Valdris solution works, Jiwan announced to the assembly. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's advanced sound system, reaching beings who breathed different atmospheres and heard different frequencies. Now we need to implement it across the entire galaxy before it's too late. The Valdris network had finished its 50,000-year calculation just 3 days ago. The ancient computers had presented their solution to Jiwan in a form that her human mind could understand, a complex dance of hyperspace jumps that would weave reality back together like threads in a cosmic tapestry. Emperor Korthvan of the Korvani Empire leaned forward in his massive chair. His scaled hide was decorated with metal implants that glowed with inner light, marking his status as supreme ruler of the galaxy's most technologically advanced civilization. You ask us to modify every ship in our fleet based on the word of primitives who learned to fly between stars only yesterday. The space-time damage is accelerating, Jiwan replied calmly. Our latest measurements show complete collapse within 18 months if we don't act now. Your empire will be just as dead as everyone else's. Korvani predictions show no such threat, the Emperor declared. Our computers detect no significant space-time degradation. Dr. Veltar, representing the Zenthari Federation, activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Your computers are wrong, Your Imperial Majesty. The Valdris network has provided us with sensor data that goes back 50,000 years. The damage accumulates in ways our current science cannot detect. The display showed a galaxy-wide map marking areas of space-time instability. Red zones now covered nearly a quarter of all inhabited space, and they were spreading rapidly toward the galactic core. Even if we accept your data, said Admiral Nexthra of the Aquatic Federation, the coordination you describe is impossible. You want every ship in the galaxy to follow precise hyperspace routes at exact times. One mistake could trigger the collapse you claim to be preventing. Jiwan nodded. That's why the Valdris built their network. The crystals will coordinate everything automatically once we activate the full system, but we need access to Valdris, sites in all territories. Which brings us back to the same problem, growled General Korath from the military coalition. You humans control the technology. How do we know you won't use it against us once your modifications are in place? The chamber erupted in arguments as representatives from different factions shouted accusations and demands. Some supported the human plan, others demanded guarantees that couldn't be given, and a few suggested that the whole crisis was a human conspiracy to gain power over other species. Captain Hyunwoo, attending the session as military advisor to the human delegation, leaned close to Jiwon. This isn't working. They're too afraid and proud to listen to reason. Then we'll have to show them something that will scare them more than cooperating with humans. Ji-won replied quietly. She activated her personal communicator and sent a coded message to Dr. Nari, who was coordinating activities at Valdris sites across the galaxy. Within minutes, the chamber's main display switched to show real-time sensor data from the galactic rim. "While we've been debating, the collapse has accelerated," Ji-won announced. "Sector ZX7749 is now completely cut off from hyperspace travel. 3 billion inhabitants are stranded with no way to evacuate." The display showed the horrifying reality of space-time collapse. An entire region of space had become a dead zone where hyperspace simply didn't work. Ships attempting to enter, that area vanished completely, lost in the quantum chaos of broken reality. "This is what happens when we wait too long," Ji-won continued. "In 18 months, this dead zone will cover half the galaxy. In 3 years, nowhere will be safe." Emperor Korthvan studied the data with his advanced sensors. Even he couldn't argue with evidence this clear and immediate. "How do we know your solution won't make things worse?" "Because we've tested it." Dr. Nari's voice came through the communication system from her position at a Valdris site. "The network has run millions of simulations. The process is completely safe when properly coordinated. Show them," Ji-won instructed. The display switched to show a small region of space where several Valdris installations were located. As the assembled representatives watched, the crystals began to glow in perfect synchronization. Ships in the area received automatic course corrections, guiding them through hyperspace routes that healed space-time damage instead of creating it. Within hours, a previously unstable region became completely stable. Trade routes that had been dangerous for decades became safe again. The demonstration was undeniable proof that the Valdris solution worked exactly as promised. "The process must begin within 72 hours, Ji-won announced. "The Valdris computers have calculated the optimal timing window. If we miss it, the next opportunity won't come for 6 months, and by then, it will be too late." The chamber fell silent as leaders from across the galaxy considered their options. The evidence was clear, the timeline was urgent, and the consequences of inaction were unthinkable. But accepting help from humanity required them to admit that the youngest species in the galaxy had capabilities their ancient civilizations lacked. "What exactly do you need from us?" asked Chancellor Vextum of the Trade Federation. Ji-won activated a new display showing the technical requirements. "Every hyperspace-capable ship must be fitted with Valdris interface modules. Human operators must be stationed at all major Valdris sites, and all military and commercial traffic must follow the routes provided by the network for exactly 96 hours during the repair sequence." "Human operators?" Emperor Korthvan's voice carried barely controlled anger. "You want us to allow humans to control our most sensitive installations?" "The Valdris technology only responds to human consciousness," Dr. Veltar explained. "We have tested this repeatedly. No other species can interface with the crystals effectively." "This is intolerable," General Korath declared. "You ask us to trust our survival to a species that barely knows how to build starships." Ji-won felt her patience finally snap. "Our species learned to build starships by studying ruins that your advanced civilizations couldn't even activate. We found a solution to a problem your computers couldn't detect, and now you're willing to let the galaxy die rather than admit that humans might be good at something." The chamber erupted in angry voices again. But this time, Captain Hyunwoo stood up and activated the emergency alert system. The piercing sound cut through all other noise, forcing everyone to pay attention. "While you argue about pride and politics," he announced, "another sector just went dark. We've lost contact with the Helix Nebula colonies. That's 12 billion. People cut off from the rest of the galaxy." The display showed the expanding zone of space-time collapse in real time. Red areas were spreading like fire, consuming stable hyperspace routes and leaving dead zones where no ship could travel. 68 hours, Ji-won said quietly. "That's how much time we have left to begin the repair sequence. After that, the damage will be too extensive to fix." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of leaders who held the fate of trillions in their hands. "The Valdris gave us a gift, the knowledge and tools to save ourselves, but they also gave us a warning. They failed because they couldn't work together when it mattered most. They let pride and fear destroy them rather than trust each other." The chamber was silent now, with only the quiet hum of life support systems. and the soft beeping of sensor displays showing the advancing catastrophe. "We have 68 hours to prove we're better than they were," Jiwan concluded. "Or we can follow them into extinction while arguing about who deserves the credit for our destruction." Emperor Korthvan was the first to speak. "The Korvani Empire will comply with your requirements, but we demand full documentation of all procedures and equal access to Valdris technology after the crisis passes." One by one, the other leaders followed suit. Fear of extinction overcame pride and suspicion. The galaxy would work together, even if it meant admitting that humans possessed abilities their advanced civilizations lacked. The greatest rescue mission in galactic history was about to begin, with humanity leading the way. 1 year later, Dr. Jiwan Park stood in the restored crystal gardens of Cathara Prime, watching the sunset paint the ancient formations in shades of gold and purple. The Valdris crystals hummed with peaceful energy, their work finally complete, after 50,000 years of patient waiting. The Great Repair, as historians were already calling it, had succeeded beyond all expectations. For 96 hours, every ship in the galaxy had followed precisely calculated hyperspace routes, weaving reality back together thread by thread. The space-time damage that had accumulated over millions of years was not just healed, it was improved. Hyperspace travel was now 23% more efficient than before the crisis. "The final reports are in," Captain Hyunwoo announced as he approached, through the crystal formations. His face showed the exhaustion of someone who had worked without rest for months, but his smile was genuine. "Zero space-time instabilities detected in any sector. The galaxy is completely stable." Dr. Nari joined them, carrying a datapad filled with congratulatory messages from across the galaxy. "The Korvani have officially requested human advisors for their research programs. Apparently they want to learn how to think chaotically, like we do." Jiwan laughed at the irony. 6 months ago, the proud Korvani had considered human thinking primitive. Now they were desperately trying to understand how human minds could see patterns that their advanced computers missed. "Any word from the Valdris network?" she asked. "The crystals have entered a new phase of operation," Nari replied, consulting her datapad. "They're no longer calculating repairs. They're monitoring and maintaining space-time integrity across the galaxy. The network will prevent this crisis from ever happening again." It was still amazing to think about. The Valdris had not only solved the space-time crisis, but had built a permanent guardian system to protect future civilizations. Their crystal computers would keep watch over galactic space-time for millions of years to come, ensuring that the mistakes of the past could never be repeated. "Dr. Park?" a young voice called from behind them. Jiwan turned to see a group of students approaching, representatives from the newly established Interspecies Academy. The Academy was one of many changes that had emerged from the crisis, bringing together young minds from across the galaxy to study in integrated programs. "We wanted to thank you," said Corvus, a young Xanthari whose pale blue skin marked him as barely an adult by his species' standards. "Because of what you discovered, we get to grow up in a galaxy where different species work together instead of competing." "The real heroes were the Valdris," Jiwan replied modestly. "I just figured out how to read their message." "But that's what made all the difference," added Thexa, an aquatic student whose breathing apparatus bubbled softly as she spoke. "You saw patterns that no one else could see. You proved that different ways of thinking can solve problems that pure logic cannot." The crisis had indeed changed how the galaxy viewed different forms of intelligence. The consortium had established the Park Institute for Interdisciplinary Studies, with Jiwan as its first director. The institute's mission was to study how different species' unique cognitive abilities could complement each other in solving complex problems. "Are you really retiring from field research?" asked Mekta, a young Korvani whose metal implants were still growing as she matured. "Not retiring," Jiwan corrected. "Expanding. There are so many Valdris sites we haven't fully explored yet. Each one contains new insights into how they thought and what they discovered. I suspect we've only scratched the surface of their knowledge." The students exchanged excited glances. The Valdris ruins had become the galaxy's greatest treasure, trove of scientific discovery. Each site revealed new technologies and concepts that pushed the boundaries of current understanding. But more importantly, they required diverse teams of researchers from multiple species to fully comprehend. As the students departed to continue their studies, Dr. Veltar approached from the research station. The Zenthari scientist had become one of Jiwan's closest collaborators, his logical mind proving to be an excellent complement to her pattern-seeking abilities. "The council meeting is in 1 hour," he reminded her. "They're announcing the final details of the new exploration initiatives." The Galactic Council had approved an ambitious program to search for other ancient networks like the Valdris system. If one vanished civilization had left behind such incredible gifts, perhaps others had done the same. The galaxy was full of ruins and mysteries that had been dismissed as unsolvable. Now there was new hope that the right combination of minds could unlock their secrets. "Any progress on the quantum communication research?" Jiwan asked as they walked toward the research station. "Remarkable progress," Veltar replied with enthusiasm. "The Valdris taught us that consciousness itself can be used as a quantum medium. We're developing communication systems that work by shared thought rather than transmitted signals." It was one of dozens of revolutionary technologies that had emerged from studying Valdris methods. The crisis had not only saved the galaxy from destruction, it had accelerated scientific progress by centuries. Technologies that might have taken millennia to develop were being discovered and implemented within months. The research station buzzed with activity as scientists from multiple species worked side by side on various projects. Human researchers were now considered essential members of any exploration team, their unique cognitive abilities highly valued by institutions across the galaxy. "Dr. Park, incoming message for you," announced the communication officer, a friendly aquatic whose tank suit allowed her to work in the station's standard atmosphere. The main display activated to show the familiar face of Dr. Kethvar from Consortium headquarters. "Jiwan, I wanted to personally inform you that the Council has approved funding for the Deep Archive project. We're going to systematically explore every known ancient ruin in the galaxy." "That's wonderful news," Jiwan replied. "When do we start?" "Teams are already being assembled. We've received volunteer applications from researchers of 47 different species. It seems everyone wants to be part of the new age of discovery you've helped create." After the communication ended, G1 walked to the station's observation deck and looked out at the crystal formations of Cathara Prime. The Valdris structures pulsed with gentle light, their eternal song finally being heard and understood. Soft chime from the crystals drew her attention to a new pattern forming in their energy flows. The Valdris network was displaying a message, not in words, but in pure mathematical harmony that spoke directly to consciousness itself. The message was simple and profound. "To those who hear this song of mathematics and meaning, you are the bridge between logic and wonder. Guard it well." Jiwan smiled as she understood the deeper meaning. Humanity had not just solved an ancient puzzle or saved the galaxy from destruction. They had proven that diversity of thought was the key to solving problems that seemed impossible. The galaxy's strength lay not in the superiority of any single species, but in the unique gifts each brought to the collective effort of understanding. The Corvani provided logical precision. The Zenthari offered analytical depth. The aquatics contributed fluid adaptability. And humans brought the chaotic creativity that could see connections where others saw only noise. "Dr. Park?" Captain Hyunwoo's voice interrupted her thoughts. "The transport is ready to take us to the council meeting." "Just a moment," she replied, taking one last look at the crystal formations. The Valdris had waited 50,000 years for someone to hear their message. They had built their network not just as a solution to a crisis, but as a gift to future generations. A reminder that the universe's greatest mysteries could be solved when different minds work together toward common understanding. As Ji-won walked toward the transport, she thought about all the ruins and mysteries still waiting to be explored. Each one might contain insights that could change the galaxy's understanding of science, technology, or consciousness itself, and each one would require the unique perspectives of multiple species to fully comprehend. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from the space-time crisis. No single species, no matter how advanced, had all the answers. But together, working as partners rather than competitors, they could unlock secrets that had remained hidden for millennia. The age of isolated civilizations was ending. The age of cooperative discovery was just beginning. And at the center of it all, humanity had found its place not as conquerors or rulers, but as the bridge between chaos and order, the species that could hear the songs that others missed, and translate them into harmonies that the entire galaxy could understand. The Valdris had left behind more than just a solution to a crisis. They had left behind a lesson about the power of understanding, the value of diversity, and the importance of listening to voices that spoke in languages others couldn't hear. The galaxy would indeed never forget the day a single human scientist heard their ancient song and helped the entire galaxy learn to sing along.